Chapters control the reading pace. They're structural containers for your scenes. Scenes control the structural pace. They manage what information is delivered and when. They manage tension and action. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has the story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and book coach. Each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now, let's begin. I work with a lot of first-time novelists and memoir writers, and one of the most common things I see across the board is that writers think in chapters instead of scenes. When they send me their pages, they'll say, here are chapters 10 through 15. When they talk about their progress, it's, I'm revising chapter 6, or I finally finished chapter 12. They organize their story by chapter. They worry about whether their chapters are long enough or too short. And this makes complete sense because when you pick up a novel or memoir, what you see are chapters. That's how a book presents itself to a reader. You don't see the scenes. They're seamless, so it's easy to mistake the two. But far too often, writers conflate their progress by how many chapters they've written. They measure quantity. And here's the misconception that gets so many writers into trouble. They think the chapter is the structural unit of the story. It isn't. The chapter is largely arbitrary. You can start a chapter in the middle of a scene. You can end a chapter before a scene resolves and pick it up in the next chapter. The chapter isn't a unit of your story. It doesn't control the structure of your story. The scene does. And because writers conflate the two, they also think sequentially, one thing after another. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. And invariably, there's too much mundane setup before the main conflict, or the conflict stacks. So a lot of different things are causing trouble for the main character, and the chapter loses focus. Or there is not enough setup, and so by the time we get to the end of the chapter, it doesn't land as powerfully as it could. And it might be a really great chapter ending, but it's not earned by what came before. The symptoms of this are very specific. Revision starts to feel impossible. You don't know what to leave in and what to leave out. You don't know where to put that flashback. If not in this chapter, then when? And if you move it to its own chapter, won't that make the chapter too short? If you cut all the description of the kitchen before the characters sit down to the table and have their argument, won't there be nothing left? These are the questions I hear a lot, and they all come from the same misunderstanding, thinking in chapters instead of scenes. Once you understand the difference, it makes writing and rewriting so much easier. So let's talk about what a chapter actually is. A chapter is not a unit of story. It's not a building block of your story. It guides the reading pace and controls the reader's experience. That's what a chapter is for. What a chapter controls is how the reader moves through the story, where they pause, where they feel the pull to keep reading, where they come up for air and absorb everything that's just happened. A chapter break is a decision about the reader's experience, specifically about what they're feeling or desperate to know what happens next. So the best chapter endings leave the reader in a state of unresolved wanting. Something has just happened or something is about to happen, and stopping here creates a pull. It ends with something unresolved, some question the reader must keep reading to answer. Or it just gives the reader a place to pause and close the book for the night. That pull is what makes someone read past their bedtime. I typically read at night, and I'll tell you that at the end of every chapter, I keep saying, just one more, just one more. And then I'll read for 2 hours. I'll be up till like 11 p.m. until there's a place where I can say, okay, I can stop here. The next chapter can wait until tomorrow. So chapters are largely arbitrary. A chapter can hold one scene or several. Some chapters are just one scene, and that scene might be 3 pages. Some chapters have a few scenes, sometimes more, but the scenes within a chapter are unified around one major dramatic movement. Some chapters are short, some are long, they have more scenes. You never want all your chapters to be one length. A 2-page chapter that ends at exactly the right moment will pull your reader forward faster than an 8-page chapter that outstays its welcome. When writers worry that trimming or cutting a passage will make the chapter too short, they're measuring the wrong thing. Length is not the measure of a chapter's value. The reader's experience is. When a chapter is bloated, full of over-explanation, repeated beats, passages that tell the reader what the scene is already showing them, it doesn't just slow the story down, it loses the reader. Their attention drifts. So cutting those passages that are dead weight doesn't shorten your chapter, it rescues it. So chapters control the reading pace. They're structural containers for your scenes. Scenes control the structural pace. They manage what information is delivered and when. They manage tension and action. That's the distinction. Okay, so let's talk scenes. A scene is the building block of your story. It's where your characters are moving through space and time in a specific location at a specific moment with a specific character goal. And it feels immediate. Events are unfolding in real time, even if you're writing in past tense. But the most important thing about a scene isn't where it takes place or who's in it. It's what changes by the end of it. Scenes are not just chronicles of what happens. A scene is a unit of action. Each scene has a purpose, not to give information or exposition, but to move your story forward towards its ultimate conclusion. A scene isn't something that happens, it's something that costs the character something. So what does this scene cost your character? What do they want? What do they believe or decide differently because this happened? And what does it open up for the reader? What do we understand now that we didn't understand before? What are we dreading? What are we hoping for? What are we dying to know? When writers don't ask those questions, scenes fill up with other things: explanation, recap, dialogue that exists to explain to the reader what's happening or what already happened or how they feel. Passages of thought that tell us how to interpret what just happened instead of letting us experience it directly. You don't need any of that if the scene is doing its job. So, how do you build a scene? Well, here's the basic structure. You want to start close to the moment of tension. You don't need a long setup, just orient us where we are and give us enough sense of time to know where we are in relation to the previous events with this character. Give us just enough context for what's about to happen. Then get into it. Your character comes into the scene wanting something. That's the scene goal. They have some expectation of an outcome. And if there are other characters in the scene, they want something too. And those wants will clash. That's where the tension lives, not in the conflict being explosive, vitriolic, or dramatic, but just in the fact that these people want different things and only one of them can get what they came for. And sometimes your character is alone in the scene. That's fine, because sometimes the interference isn't another person. It isn't something on the outside. It's the character's own conflicting desires. They're battling themselves. That internal tug of war is still conflict. It's still what drives the scene forward. So there's something your character wants, something interferes or obstructs. There's a battle of wills, external or internal. And at the end, it's either going to be a win or a loss for your character. That's the basic structure of a scene. There's more to it than that, and that's a conversation for another day. But if you can identify those elements in every scene you write, you're already thinking like a storyteller. So now the question is, how do scenes fit into a chapter? How do you know which scenes belong together? A chapter can hold one scene or several, but the scenes inside it aren't just sequential. They're not simply whatever comes next. They're unified around one central dramatic movement. That's what gives a chapter its shape, and it determines how many scenes inside it. That movement doesn't have to be confined to one location or even one time period. The scenes within a chapter might jump around, but they're all illuminating the same thing: a state of being, a relationship with one specific character, a dynamic, the same question, the same cost to the character. For example, I've been rereading Bright Angel Time by Martha McPhee. This is a coming-of-age story narrated by 8-year-old Kate, and it's all about her family's chaotic cross-country journey in the 70s after her parents' divorce. And her mother is following this charismatic but irresponsible therapist named Anton into this world of free love and neglect. And the first chapter introduces Anton and the mother and the sisters through multiple scenes, but they're all unified around one dramatic movement. How Anton captivates everyone, how he seduces the mother, how the children become smitten, how his presence rearranges their world. Everything in that chapter circles around that. The second chapter shifts entirely. Now the scenes are about the father, the breakup of the family, his absence, and what that costs them. Different time period, different emotional territory, but again, all unified around one dramatic movement. Revolutionary Road works the same way. The first chapter has several scenes. It's all about April Wheeler's play, her public failure, Frank's clumsy attempt to comfort her, her coldness afterward. So there's multiple scenes, but they're all circling the same thing: the distance between this married couple exposed by April's public failure. That's the chapter. And then the second chapter is the fight on the way home and its aftermath. One dramatic movement, the marriage cracking open, things said that can't be unsaid. And when I say the scenes are unified, I don't mean the scenes are covering the same ground. They're building on each other, deepening the same situation. Across the whole novel, you'll see the story returning to the same core problem again and again, from different angles and in different variations, with higher stakes each time. But that's the arc of the story, not what's happening inside a single chapter, but scene by scene. All those scenes and chapters add up to something. It's not this happened, then this happened, then this. It's an accumulation. Each scene is adding weight to the same central problem, the same wound, until the character can't avoid it anymore. So what does this mean for your work in progress? Stop thinking in chapters, start thinking in scenes. It'll make it so much easier. The moment you make that shift, the moment you start asking what each scene is doing rather than what each chapter is doing, or worrying if your chapter is too long or too short, something changes. You stop protecting words that aren't earning their place. You stop adding more because you think the chapter needs it. And you start asking the only question that matters. Is this individual scene serving the story's central problem? Is it moving the story forward with one new insight, one new piece of knowledge or realization for your character, one new question for the reader to crave the answer to? You want to ask those questions scene by scene, not chapter by chapter. That's where the real work of revision lives, not in the chapters, in the scenes inside them. So here's what I want you to take away from this episode. For the most part, chapters are arbitrary. They're structural containers used to manage the reader's experience. They can have one scene or multiple scenes. They control the reading pace, where the reader pauses, where they feel the pull to keep going, where they come up for air. Scenes are something else entirely. Scenes control the structural pace. Each one is an individual building block of your story. It's a significant moment happening to your characters at a specific time and place. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each one is a mini-story with a want, an interference, and an outcome. And each one is leading to the final outcome of your story. Something is different at the end of a scene than it was at the beginning. So stop thinking in chapters, start thinking in scenes. That's where your story unfolds. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform. And if you're listening on Apple, please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.